to The Right Perspective. Today, we're going to recap and discuss the Lethal Weapon movie franchise. 4 action comedy films that star Mel Gibson and Danny Glover and were directed by Richard Donner. It includes Lethal Weapon, Lethal Weapon 2, Lethal Weapon 3, and Lethal Weapon 4. Lethal Weapon came out in 1987 and had a budget of $15 million and a box office of $120 million. Lethal Weapon 2 in 89 had a budget of $30 million and a box office of $228 million. Lethal Weapon 3 in 92 had a budget of $35 million and a box office of, wait for it, $321 million. Lethal Weapon 4 came out in 98 and had actually a budget of $100 to $150 million and had a box office of $286 million. So clearly the numbers tell a very compelling story about whether this franchise is a classic. There was even a TV series.
They could have retired off of that.
Clearly. There was even a TV series spinoff that ran for 3 seasons on Fox from September 2016 to February 2019. And I will tell you all that it's reported that Lethal Weapon 5 is in the works. For some, all of this, and frankly, the lifespan of this movie franchise alone would be enough to consider these movies, a classic. But today we will determine whether they are classics from the right perspective. We'll do a recap, discuss the movie, and then we'll take a vote using a voting symbol that we will pick especially for this discussion. But let's start with intros. Kick us off, bro.
Hi, I'm Aubrey Wright. I'm the oldest.
I'm Genia Wright. I'm the middle.
Hi, I'm Brittany Wright, and I'm the youngest.
Right.
Y'all, it's the Lethal Weapon franchise, okay? And it's also the kickoff for us for season 2 of The Right Perspective.
That's it. Season 2.
Fireworks.
Episode 1.
I knew you were going to do that. Oh my gosh, y'all. And you know what? It's so funny because we had so much time to think about a voting symbol for this. And I really only came up with 2 options.
All right. I'm very intrigued.
And I just want to name for you all, okay, that in prior, Right Perspective episodes, we have had gun, we've had badge. Okay, so I would just encourage us to think outside the box a little bit. I just want to name that for all of us if we just want to kind of just challenge ourselves.
She's really outside the box. Oh, boy, we better buckle up.
Okay.
Buckle up, podcast land. Here we go.
The first voting symbol is the fishing boat. Now, the fishing boat, as you all will remember, it's really a symbol of Murtaugh's elusive retirement, right? And it's also one of those things that really is about, it's always out there, and they almost use it as a gauge about his readiness to leave the force. And so it's just, to me, because the movie is the arc of the franchise is about the juxtaposition of these 2 different cops in terms of where they are and their professional trajectory. There's something about that elusive kind of, can he have his fishing boat retirement, that to me does kind of sum up the movies potentially.
All right.
Second recommendation is for voting symbol is the countdown. Okay, and listen, that was an ongoing shtick where they would be like, okay, we're going to come out and get them on a count of 3.
But how's the countdown a symbol?
Because you can just say, does it get your countdown? And the answer can be yes or no. Does it get your count down? And what's so good about it is it's one of those things that we see them norm in it over time. And so it truly is, again, it's about the arc of their relationship and the rhythm of their relationship growing. And so it goes from being an indicator that they're out of sync to almost an inside joke between the 2 of them in terms of the way they use the countdown. And so it's one of those things that punctuates the arc of their closeness and their relationship. Those are my recommendations for potential voting symbols.
I gotta say, Janai, those are actually not bad. They're not bad. The boat
season 2
was a
Not
little.
bad.
The boat was a little, but and I'm gonna tell you, when I first heard the countdown, I wasn't convinced. But you brought me around. You brought me around with the explanation, and it is very prevalent in the Lethal Weapon franchise.
Absolutely.
The 3 countdown.
Mm-hmm. It's such a fun little.
It is because
part.
in Lethal Weapon, was it was in Lethal Weapon 3 when he's first meeting Lorna, and they're about to attack, and they're like doing the countdown, like, what? And she went on 2, and it was like, what? You're supposed to wait till 3. It was very prevalent.
They kept it running as a trope. Yeah.
It was very prevalent. Now I definitely had I was going for a bullet. I was going for a bullet.
Oh yeah, the hollow bullet.
The hollow tip, even though it wasn't a hollow tip bullet that he had in his hand, which always bothers me. But that aside,
I would never even have known that.
That I know nobody, like, literally, that's the only thing that's ever
bugged
in
you.
this whole franchise.
Yeah,
the only thing that ever bugged
that's
me.
inconsistent.
But anyway, so but the whole point is that first of all, Lethal Weapon, Riggs is the Lethal Weapon,
right?
And obviously the bullet is the representation of that, and that was in the beginning of his arc when he connected with Danny.
That's good.
That's good,
bro, because that bullet is also it was an indication of his mental state at the beginning of their relationship. And there was a moment where he handed it over. Yeah. Riggs hands it over to Murtaugh, and it's like it is the moment where their partnership is like solidified.
Yeah.
That's a good one, bro.
So
that's good.
All right, where you at, Britt?
What you got?
What'd you come up with just now?
Because you know it was.
I know.
Game time. We call her Game Time Britt.
That's right.
Crack rock, a gun.
Season 2 was
or an explosion.
I didn't think it was coming back again.
Season 2 was going so well. Season 2 was going so well.
How did Lethal Weapon 1 open up?
There was
a nose.
It was not crack.
She was snorting. She snorted. And I said, there it is. Those drugs.
I would love I would love to leave that in season 1 of The Right Perspective.
I would love to leave it.
I didn't think it was I didn't know it was coming.
Stop getting movies with drugs. Stop getting movies with drugs in them. We wouldn't have to worry about it.
Cop movies are always going to have some kind of drugs.
Well, and there's your crack rock.
And what was your other one, sis? You said crack rock and
guns and explosion.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's not really much to discuss with those.
Yeah.
Listen, I keep it simple to the point. There were guns in every movie. There were explosions.
I'm not gonna hate on the explosion option though, because you know what?
The explosion option isn't that bad. Honestly.
It's not bad at all.
Because it would be, you can find an explosion emoji or little symbol easily.
Yes.
When someday we go back and make you edit these and put
little images.
But all right, so
I don't hate explosion. I don't, because
so
it's something that's
really good.
so
we got some
clearly a clear part of this franchise. It is the big.
They were always getting in trouble by their captain.
Yep.
You're ruining things. Why are you always ruining things in this? You're just ruining things.
Just ruining.
We have some good options.
Yeah.
For me, I think I like the countdown. I think my vote's for the
countdown.
You know, that song just to me really brings it home.
I wish stuff couldn't get copyright infringed.
Countdown.
That would be dope to have played a little clip, but we can't.
Countdown. It's okay. I sung it.
All right. You did. And
that's okay. Maybe by season 3, we'll actually start to license things.
Hey, there we go.
Yes.
Hashtag goals.
Hashtag goals.
So, okay. So what's your vote, Janelle? The countdown?
Right, let's go. Countdown.
All right, countdown. So we're seeing if the Lethal Weapon franchise gets our countdown.
All right.
Oh,
yes.
So let's get into it.
All right.
Hit us with the it's
the recap.
The 4 movie recap. It's going to be real short.
It's going to be so tight. It's going to be so tight. And the other thing is, if you're new to our podcast, you need to know we are all about spoilers. Spoiler alert. We at the top of every podcast, we do a full recap because we know we're talking about old movies. And so sometimes people haven't seen it in a while. They didn't get a chance to refresh. And some people who haven't seen it, but want to enjoy the podcast. So we are riddled with spoilers. They're everywhere. Okay. Let's get into our recap. So
to and fro.
Hither and thither.
The Lethal Weapon franchise centers around 2 Los Angeles police officers. The first, Martin Riggs, played by Mel Gibson, becomes suicidal after the death of his wife in a car crash. He's a lone wolf that lives in a trailer with his dog. Even though he's an expert martial artist and a sharpshooter, a combo that makes him a lethal weapon. Nobody wants to work with him because he takes unnecessary risks. Okay. Some people think he's faking it so he can get a psycho pension, and others, including the police therapist, think he's actually losing it. Riggs ends up getting partnered with Roger Murtaugh, who is played by Danny Glover. And Murtaugh is a by-the-book cop who is a family man with a wife and 3 kids. He is 50, and he is happily only a few years from spending his retirement on a fishing boat. Hence, this character's iconic refrain, "I'm too old for this shit." The 2 immediately clash, but of course, it ends up being a recipe for great police work. In the first movie, Riggs and Murtaugh's investigation of a murder uncovers an international drug trafficking ring that has ties to government officials, military, big business, mercenary groups, you name it. There are shootouts with helicopters, a hostage situation with Murtaugh's daughter, a prostitute's house gets blown up, Riggs is tortured by a bad guy, and many other action-packed moments that wreck a ton of public and private property. By the end of the first movie, Riggs and Murtaugh have shut down the drug ring and they have started to become friends. By the second movie, they have moved beyond friendship to real and true partnership. They are in their groove. Riggs is like a part of the Murtaugh family. This time, the ginormous, insidious drug ring they are investigating is out of South Africa and is being run by people with diplomatic power and immunity. And they are apartheid-loving racists on top of everything else. What do you do when the bad guys can legally do whatever they want in your country? Well, I'm glad you asked. The answer can be summed up in 5 words. Boom, pow, bang, crash, wham. More public and private property damage. And listen, you know the bad guys were not going to get away this time for 3 reasons. Number 1, Riggs and Murtaugh have an undying passion for justice. Number 2, they had an annoying witness in protective custody named Leo Getz, played by Joe Pesci.
Yes.
And number 3, the bad guys killed Riggs' current girlfriend and revealed that they had killed his wife to distract him from taking them down in a prior case of his. By the end of that movie, the diplomatic immunity of the bad guys have been revoked because they were dead. And Murtaugh and Riggs are more in sync than ever, and Riggs is on the path to closure because he has avenged the murder of his wife. In Lethal Weapon 3, Murtaugh is literally finally days away from retirement, and his family is counting down. In fact, they're about to sell their house. And surprise, Leo Getz, Joe Pesci, is back as their real estate agent. Riggs is more well-adjusted than we've ever seen him. And this time, the bad guys are not drug dealers, they're arms dealers. And not just any arms dealers. They are former and corrupt cops. More than 15,000 guns have been stolen from a police storage unit, and they are making their way to drug dealers and young people on the streets. Well, Riggs and Murtaugh are not going to stand for that. And this time they have another teammate, Lauren Nicole, Lauren Nicole, who's played by Renee Russo from Internal Affairs, a fierce investigator that gives Riggs a run for his money in more ways than one. Guns, bombs, helicopters, cars, trains. The bad guys are taken down. And surprise, Murtaugh decides not to retire. And it's a good thing too, because in Lethal Weapon 4, Chinese mobsters led by Wah Sing Koo, played by Jet Li, are engaging in human trafficking, printing counterfeit money, and working with corrupt government officials to release top criminals from prison. Riggs and Murtaugh and Detective Butters, a young cop played by Chris Rock, are on the case. And the stakes are higher than ever because the bad guys come for their families. Riggs and Lorna have a baby on the way. Murtaugh is expecting a grandchild. Exploding houses, car chases, underwater shootouts. The bad guys are done. And while Riggs and Murtaugh are not walking away from the game or retiring, they both acknowledge that they have other priorities now and are probably getting a little too old for this shit. The end.
That was excellent. That was excellent. And listen, here's the thing about
that one was fun to write.
To the left of them.
That one was
to the right.
Trying to get 4 movies in, I gotta tell y'all, that was actually fun.
well,
that
I mean,
was a fun break.
Action packed. We're done here. Good night.
The thing is, and I'm gonna tell you, like, they've been talking about Lethal Weapon 5 forever, but I actually
they put out a date. They put out
a date.
I
know, but it hasn't been the first time.
So okay.
And
the director died. He just died. He just passed away.
They did, but I don't think that. I think theoretically Mel Gibson could do it.
Yeah.
But as far as directing, but I'm so torn because as much as I love these movies, and these were actually suggested by Brittany. But I think Brittany suggested them as, this is a classic. That we should watch. But for me, and you all know how I get. I love, the Lethal Weapon franchise. And
so you're saying that a 5 wouldn't. Like, what makes you nervous about a potential Lethal Weapon 5?
What I'm saying is 4 capped off the series perfectly.
Yeah.
And they were, even with the way that it all got together with them taking a picture. Also, if you notice, the cast, like the kids and the wife, they haven't had like huge acting careers outside of the movies, but they all were in all of the movies.
It's true.
And I don't think they're going to be able to accomplish that, with this. So I wouldn't want to see like, because of different things that are going on, I wouldn't want to see recasting. So I now let me say this: if Lethal Weapon 5 comes out, I shall be in the very first showing of the movie.
Yeah.
Period. But I'm just saying I will have like a butterfly in my stomach because like the Bourne trilogy was, the Bourne Identity, Bourne Supremacy, and the Bourne
Ultimatum.
Though, but then they came out with that 4th
I haven't even seen it because I reject its existence. How dare you have a different person that's not Jason Bourne? It was called Bourne Legacy or Bourne. But
the thing is that I was okay with that premise because they were delving in deeper into the lore, but it wasn't a Bourne movie. So that's what infuriated me about it. You know, like all the Bourne movies have certain elements. He's gonna do a whole bunch of killing, whole bunch of that, but every one he had a one-on-one fight with somebody who was serious. You know what I'm saying? Every one. Like the first one, the dude who came through the window.
There's always a contemporary. It's like a peer. It's like a peer who was in
that's what I'm saying.
programming.
I remember one thing from that franchise, and that he was running on the roofs.
So good.
That's it. I don't remember anything else.
That's all you need.
That was important. And then he was on the way to do, that was the third major fight between him and Desh. And when he was running over those, Brittany, let me tell you,
I remember
my excitement when he was running on the roofs, and he jumped through the window. He jumped, and then they cut the sound, and he hit that window like, and then it was just on. So the point I'm trying to make is
that is one of those movies where it's like, if I happen to turn it on, and I have an engagement, something that I need, somewhere I need to be, I might just be a little late.
Yeah, I might be a little late.
Even though it's on television, I could pull it up on any streaming service. But if I happen upon it,
it catches you.
I just feel like
and so
it's so well done.
And so I don't want to get too.
We're recapping.
What I'm trying to make
movie.
is that all the Lethal Weapon movies were Lethal Weapon movie. Well, I'm bringing it back because what I'm saying is that all the Lethal Weapon movies are Lethal Weapon movies.
Yeah.
They weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. They found the formula that
they
worked,
sure did.
And they gave it to the fans every single time.
They did, bro.
And so I just don't want to see that
ruined. The recipe.
So that's why I would be nervous. But I would be there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's risky. It's risky with the director dying too. That's the other thing. Yeah. It's like it's gonna be some new blood, and it's like, what about the old blood that had it figured out? Yeah, that's tricky. You know, sis, what is your thought? What's your reaction to a possibility of a Lethal Weapon 5?
I'm gonna see it.
Brittany's like, will there be crack rocks in it?
Listen, if there are drugs, I am there. Because you know what? I think about Bad Boys 3. Was it 3? Yep. And just how those directors, they were new. They weren't anyone that, you know, they grew up seeing those movies, and they were able to still continue the essence of Mike Larry and of course I can't think of Martin Lawrence's character's name right now. Thank you, Marcus. They were able to, you know, keep the essence of Mike and Marcus in that movie. Yeah. And so then they also were able to bring back people. And you know, all from the old characters, even if it was just for a moment, they were able to bring them back into the movie. So I think it could be done, and I think it can be done respectfully, but it just has to be somebody who is respectful of the franchise and not trying to just recreate the wheel. You know, and especially with knowing that Murtaugh and Riggs are old, so that needs to be part of it. He was 50 in the first movie. How old is he now?
Right.
You know, so we're needing to make sure that is just a part of the element. So I would love to see how the kids, if they're like married and if they have their own kids, these new babies, how old are they? Like, you know, just seeing how they would put all that in. So I would definitely go see it.
They better come with it. if they do it,
they better.
That's
do it
all
right.
I know. That's all I know.
There's so many action stars that are out there that could really do justice.
I mean,
to these characters.
In my other concern, and as you all know, if you've heard any of our podcasts, you know when I like a movie, we don't know where Genia and Brittany fall yet, but you know when I like a movie, I tend to monopolize because I'm excited. And I feel like I've been getting better.
The right perspective featuring Aubrey, right?
Even though my sisters rend me constantly and don't recognize my growth, I am working.
You got to grow first. You got to grow first.
I'm making a note about things we're going to discuss offline. Okay, and that's number one bullet. Okay, that we'll discuss outside of podcast land. All right, but what I did to further my growth.
What did Jill Scott say? Show me, show me, show me. She said, Jill said that. Come on, Jill. That's what
You
Jill
just
said.
better be glad. You just better be glad I'm not going to drop you off the spot. But I'm not going to drop you and say we had technical difficulties. But what I did to control myself, I wrote down a list of bullets.
Oh, hashtag preparation.
Bullet points.
All right.
I wrote down a list of bullets.
The question is, how many sub bullet points do these bullet points have?
I love the list, and when it's bulleted, oh man.
Here's
cooking with fire.
Here's the thing. And I feel as though, and I know this is not normally the format, but I feel as though, since I'm being very open that obviously this movie is a classic to me, I feel like we could go through the bullets and use those as the jumping off points for the conversation. And that way I can control myself. Brittany, you're acting like this is not a good idea. I thought this was a great way.
It's a great idea.
To rein myself in.
I love it.
I think it's a top-notch plan, bro.
And that'd be all
I love it.
Let's do it. I will just say, at this point, none of us knows how many bullets there are.
Right.
Are they grouped in a way that's going to lead us through?
I kept on simple.
What?
Because
what does not that many mean?
Listen.
Let's give in. Let's do it.
I'm in.
I'm all in.
All right.
Take us to the bullet.
And the reason why what made me think about it is that our conversation was going into one of my first bullets. And one of the things that I loved about the franchise is that the movies were all simple and entertaining, and they dealt with issues at the same time, but were never heavy-handed. And what I'm saying is that so this is a two-sided thing I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The first side of it is that's bullet number one of why I love these movies. It's like you come in, you figure out what's going on, and then you got the good guys, you got the bad guys, and we're going at it. And like they'll have the message. They talked about apartheid. They talked about drugs in the community.
Yep.
But they didn't do it overhanded. And so I love that. And that's one thing I would be concerned about with another movie, because nowadays everybody starts off with messages and try to like back into, and every movie isn't about that. Lethal Weapon is about going to see Riggs jump out of a perfectly good car and chase another one on foot.
So
that's
reckless.
what Lethal Weapon is about.
So reckless.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And bro,
absurd.
So far, your bullets are top notch, because
So
you know
that's my
what, bro?
first bullet.
That's so good. Because
I'm sorry. What was the bullet?
So the bullet is
all right. So Brittany, we're going to use our listening skills. We're going to use our listening skills for the podcast.
I didn't feel like he said the words of the bullet. I felt like he was leading up to the bullet. And I was like,
no, that's the bullet. The bullet is my number one reason why I love the Lethal Weapon franchises is that they all have simple, entertaining plots.
Got it.
That touch on issues, not heavy-handed.
Yep.
And that was my first I'm
in there.
Well, bro, on the topic of bullets, I will say that me and Brittany did a little prep. And backstory for the listeners. We're recording now on our second go at a podcast recording session. There was a first go where our brother was so tardy that we ended up just not doing it. okay, that first night. And me and Brittany used that time to really put some bullets together, bro. And this is where we're having the mind meld, because me and Britt literally went movie by movie, and we were like, what were all of the sub messages that they put out there that were not heavy handed? We literally went movie by movie. And for that very reason, bro. Man. And of course, I took top notch notes.
And we go check this out. We hadn't even discussed this prior.
We didn't even discuss
this. This is just happening.
It's just happening. But that's what. But that goes to show. That goes to show how well they did it. That we didn't debrief it as a group, but it's something that's so important to the discussion of these movies.
Please hit me with the bullets. Please.
So the first movie, they hit on suicide and the stigmas around mental health. They hit on grieving. They hit on the relationship between communities and police, and they hit on corruption at the highest levels of business and government. And they hit all of those things. None of them were the primary message, but you walked away like, at least a little bit, because they hit on it enough. The way that they did it, they hit those topics in ways that served the story. And so as you're watching, no one said, man, there is a ton of stigma around mental health. And so the cops are really not giving Riggs a fair chance to. No one said that, but it was clearly what it was happening. No one said, the police and the community don't get along. But at the same time, they found themselves interviewing some kids at one of the crime scenes. And one of the kids says to the other kid, a black kid, when the police try to interview them, the kid says to the other kid, don't tell him your name. He's going to put you in jail. Mama says policemen shoot black people. Is that true? That was it. They didn't have to pop out with message. It was just
exactly.
It was part of what was happening, but they did it enough that you could catch it. For the second movie, we listed racism and apartheid, diplomatic immunity, y'all. They really raised that, like, this needs to be discussed. And then that little boycotting of tuna. That was another one.
Yeah, that was another one.
Third movie, they hit on police corruption. They hit on the complexities of being a Black police officer. And again, did it deftly. They hit on gun control, and it was like that conversation of like, they could have had any kid die, but they had a situation where Murtaugh ended up shooting and killing a child that he grew up with. And in processing that, he said things like, they referenced genocide, as a way to storytell what's happening, in terms of the guns being out of control in some communities.
Right.
So, and then in the fourth movie, we had immigration, human trafficking, modern day slavery. We had nativism, which is just that, protecting the interests of quote unquote native born inhabitants of a place against those of immigrants, which is completely hypocritical in a country like America. Makes no sense whatsoever. And then about how money circumvents laws. You remember that line from the and sis, you called out line from Jet Li's character. America has laws written by men, but money can change everything.
That's right.
That was our list. That was our list. And we sat pretty, it took us a minute, but we literally mined through and we tried to catch them all.
Yes, I love it.
But that's such a good first bullet, bro. And I think you're right. I mean, if they were to continue this franchise, they would have to honor this. And it makes you wonder if they did it in the television show. I haven't watched the television show. Did y'all watch the television show? Have y'all seen any of it?
I did. I watched it all.
Did they do this in the show, bro?
The show was entertaining, but it was a different feel.
They weren't getting on, yeah.
So and it wasn't memorable enough for me to, that would be a whole nother conversation.
Totally. But
So,
anyway, you answered the question. They didn't really do that. Okay.
Yeah. That not that I remember anyway. Not that I remember. I mean, I'm sure they must have, but like you said, I would hope if it went forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Gosh. And man, anyway, I know we got to keep going. I know you got more bullets, but I was just remembering we were reflecting on like, you know, that scene with those kids talking to the police officers. You know, it was just, anyway, it was just so well done.
Yeah, it definitely was. It definitely
they did a great job in bringing all the social issues in, and how I will tell you my initial thought process for Lethal Weapon. I realized I had only seen Lethal Weapon 4. And it made sense when I looked at the dates of when all the other movies came out. So what was that? 87, 90, what, 3?
Right.
And like, so I was born in 85, so I wasn't old enough to
even be watching movies.
No, it was 87, 89, 92.
Yeah, I wasn't old enough to see any of these movies, and if I was old enough, I didn't care about action movies at that time. And so I only remembered really 4 when it came out. And I just remember Lethal Weapon being so funny. And so I just assumed that was going to be how all the movies were. Real life, these Lethal Weapon movies are pretty dramatic. They have their funny good parts.
They got increasingly funny.
Yeah, but when it first started, it was very dramatic.
It had funny parts.
And it was still funny, but it had parts funny, like funny parts, but it was still very dramatic how it was dealing with issues, and it caught me off guard. And so, but I appreciate that they did that because they were dealing with very serious issues. And so to have someone like a Riggs dealing with suicide, the loss of his wife, and then getting to be partners with someone like a Murtaugh who's more stable and is ready to challenge him in a way, because at one point he gave Murtaugh a gun and said, do it. Okay, I mean, if you want to, just go ahead.
Well, let me ask you this.
Riggs didn't want to.
Because I'm curious, because you brought up an interesting point, because you saw the 4th one first, and then you saw the first one, you know, when we started this series. Now I know that was dramatic shift in tone from 4 to 1. But another thing I liked is that they did increase the comedy, but I felt as though the shift was not jarring if you watched them in order. Did you get that same feel? Or did you feel like it was like a dramatic shift from like 3 to 4?
No, I didn't feel like it was dramatic. I felt like it was gradual. And I felt as though those that casted the movie, they casted them so well. Normally people they'll add new blood to a movie because we just need someone to freshen up, you know, the next movie. And this person is not.
They did
well, no, I'm saying they need someone to freshen it up. This person is not gelling with the cast. And so they do that. They didn't do that. There are movies that do that. Yeah, they didn't do that in this movie. And so every person that they added to the cast actually added to the movie. So you have
that's so true.
Riggs,
it flow right with it.
Like, exactly. You have Riggs who was like this. All right, I'm counting to 3, but really I'm starting at 1. And then you have Murtaugh that's like, Riggs, we're argued. Let's not do this. And then you all of a sudden have Joe Pesci coming in. Okay. And he's like this little nervous, never had friends. Like, he's just adding himself to them. And they're like, no, you are not a part of this. And he's like, I know you're saying that, but I'm still going to show up. And so you have that, and then you have him. You don't think that this person is going to be another character that just stays in their life. And then they come into 3, and then you have Lorna, who's then added in, and she's like Russo. This really, this so sassy cop. she's a diva, and she is don't mess with her.
Don't
all
even
at the same
try
time.
Lorna.
You know, I just
can I put it?
and then
Don't try Lorna if you
This
know
was
what
it.
is good for
Lorna at
you.
all.
Don't even try her when she's pregnant. You will get got.
listen.
And the thing I loved about Lorna is that she's another one I would add to the list of like Sarah Connor, Clarice Starling. Of she's obvious. You don't have to name that she's in this male-dominated world because that's what it is. But it's like, but she is so clearly like she never had to demand her respect. She just was respected because she's over there fighting 5 dudes. You know what I'm saying? And like it was just just that scene which is one of my favorite scenes in 3, with Riggs was watching her and he was telling Raj, like, don't worry, she got it. You know what I mean? But it wasn't like, it was like, he wasn't looking at her like, because she was a woman and she got it. It was just like, no, she's my peer. She is a fellow badass.
Totally, because when we first encountered her, there was a flirtation, but Riggs flirts with everybody. But it was like it was she had to prove herself to them, but it wasn't because she was a woman. It was because she was from internal affairs.
That's right.
That was the distance. It was the work that she was doing, and the fact that she was kind of keeping secrets from them. That's the distance they had to overcome. It wasn't her womanness.
So,
but that's another point.
And he knew she was a woman when they started comparing them battle scars.
I love the way they did that. And bro,
another great scene.
They did a great job.
And you hit on another very important point, which is these movies, they did right by that casting in terms of the racial and gender diversity. Listen, even all I ever want to see is a realistic world where you have extras that just look like the extras that might be there.
Like
that's
just
all.
Walking around.
And I gotta
You're not
say,
on Friends where even the extras are all white in New York City.
Right.
Eye roll, large eye roll.
Big eye roll. And I just thought, my gosh, there was obviously such an intention around it that you can't get to that beautiful,
it was so intentional,
racial
that it
and
unintentional.
Exactly. You can't get there accidentally. That was a beautiful intentional work. And we have to celebrate this movie for doing that, even at a time where it wasn't necessarily happening consistently in the 80s. It was just so well done. I mean, it's one thing to have 2 leads that are different races, but for the whole cast to have a balance, I was just like, it just kept blowing my mind.
And it didn't even,
I was so grateful.
Living.
Yes,
they were.
These people living.
And even when they brought up race, it was done in a way that was funny or strategic. Like when the apartheid scene, when Joe Pesci, what is Joe Pesci's name in that movie?
Leo Getz.
Thank you. When Leo is going into the office and he's like, listen, I have this friend. He wants to move to South Africa. I'm telling him, it's not a good idea. It's a bad idea. I need you to help me to convince him not to go. And the guy is like, oh, well, I don't see why not, because the guy is just assuming that it's right. And Danny Glover walks in and the guy is just like, well, why do you want to go? And it's so I love that they can bring.
You didn't get the best line from that.
Oh,
but you're black.
You're black. He was so confused.
He was so confused.
But you're black.
Yes.
And so it was just so funny how they were able to bring that in.
Yes.
They just brought it in in such a way that was so funny.
When Leo Guest was and Murtaugh was like, you dumb son of a bitch. He was like, yeah, you dumb son of a bitch.
Oh my gosh. And you know what else when we're talking here about these
so funny.
The way that I feel like what we're really talking about is like the character, the casting but it's also the character development, the way that they develop the characters, even if it was a character that didn't have a huge role to play overall. So like that guy in the
Embassy.
He just had a couple of lines, but it was so well cast, it was so well done, and every single line of dialogue added value for the larger story. And then that made, when we were just talking about that, it made me think about Murtaugh's family. And again, if you were to just write out all their lines, they didn't say much, you know. But we felt their presence because of the way that we were in relationship with them. It was like we're watching this whole family, like in the last
and
movie.
Nobody was recast.
We're watching this whole family celebrate that the father, that Murtaugh's finally going to retire. And the whole time we've been grappling with like, oh my gosh, the weight that this family has to bear when this man is going out risking his life every single friggin' day. And so it's another one of those subtle things that's happening, but they do it so well. That family relationship. What would it be like to be married to a police officer, or be the child of a police officer, or somebody in the military?
You spilled me directly into my next bullet, which is excellent casting and great acting. Because I'm gonna tell you, I'm a big fan, obviously, of the 80s, 90s action movies where it is just ridiculous. I love the ridiculous action. I love Arnold Schwarzenegger. I love, Sylvester Stallone and Chuck Norris and all that stuff where you got somebody running around getting shot at by 50 people and nobody hits them. I love all that. But the problem,
machine guns abound.
Abound. But when it comes to, but in all movies, there's going to be a part where you got to act. And unfortunately, most times when these action stars get to try to act, like, it's like, okay, but it's hard. But when you think,
it's like Stallone. It's a little risky.
But when you think about the big scenes like the first scene when when Riggs was contemplating suicide, that scene is heavy and it's no words. He's just, and like when he finally doesn't do it, he's like, oh, I miss you. You feel that pain. Totally. Like, or when Murtaugh thought Riggs was about to die. You know what I mean? Or when in the last movie when Leo went to go, he's a goofy, he's the comic relief mostly, but he was the one when he came to talk to Riggs when he was at his wife's
in the graveyard. Yeah.
Nailed that scene.
Yeah, totally.
So definitely the casting.
Well, on the topic of acting, I have a question, and it could be controversial.
Let's do it.
Danny Glover a good actor? All right, now I gotta tell y'all, there were times where I was like, is he doing a good job? Because I wasn't completely sure. There were times where it felt to me like he was just reciting lines, but then I would tell myself, no, that's just how this character shows up and how this character delivers things. Because this is but then I started to think through Danny Glover's work as I know it. And I had a conclusion, again, in this internal conversation where I was like, you know what? I don't feel like I know his portfolio as well as I thought I did. Because when I was trying to think of Danny Glover movies, I was like, Color Purple, Lethal Weapon. And then I struggled. I honestly couldn't think. And so I was like, is he doing a good job right now? There were moments where I was like, I don't know if he is. I don't know. Did y'all have any moments where it was just like, feeling like he was reading or like reciting lines? Did you feel that at all?
What about you, Britt?
No.
Okay.
I felt like his character in this movie, in this series, was to be nervous and to be cautious like a father would.
Okay.
Like the scene, was that in 2 or 3 where they're walking into this office building with the car that has a bomb in it. And he's like, oh, the bomb squad's on the way. Okay. Oh yeah, we're good. We can go ahead and go.
That's 2.
And Riggs is 2. And Riggs is like, well, we should go in there. They never show up on time. And I'm watching him. He is more just nervous and kind of a pushover in a sense. So I feel like Danny Glover is a good actor. Like he does the roles.
And I'm not hating on Danny Glover, really.
No,
I just had some moments like
I'm gonna tell you, like when he, especially in 3, Lethal Weapon 3, that's another thing I loved. Sub Point. I love how they just kept the title simple. Lethal Weapon 1. 2,
they didn't say
3,
lethal or
4.
weapon.
More
lethal.
That's another sub.
Lethal Weapon 2. We're in Japan.
You ain't gotta worry about the order because they got it exactly right.
Like, listen, let me tell y'all something. On the right perspective, I don't know if y'all ever gonna get the Fast and Furious franchise. It's too many. Okay, we just want y'all to know that. It's 8 million of them.
I haven't.
We could do the first one possibly.
We could do the first one, but
yeah, but in 3, when he shot the boy, you know what I'm saying?
Okay,
in Lethal
what, bro?
Weapon 3, like seeing him process.
Thank you for that. You're right.
Pain, he got in there.
Yeah, he did.
And when he was working up that ladder to get to where that gun came from, I believed it.
Yeah.
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 You
know? Right.
Listen, and especially when the young cop got shot and he looked at him and he was like another baby. And I said, Danny's about to kill everybody in the city.
Yeah.
To find what's going on. I said, Danny's about to kill everybody.
Yeah. You're right.
Murtaugh's about to catch.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I want to strike my earlier reservation because you're right. You're totally right. I mean, there was I guess it was just his choices for the characters sometimes were just so like straightforward, but it was a choice. It was the choice. It was how he that's Murtaugh. So, all right. Thank you for that. Because you're right. On those scenes where he needed to go deeper, like when he thought Riggs was dead.
That's what I'm saying.
Listen.
That's what
I was in it. I was in it.
Like anytime one of them had to go serious, they all did it good. So it doesn't jar you out of the movie.
You're right.
You know what I mean? Like it doesn't jar you out of the movie. Because a lot of times the action scenes will be great in those old movies. But when they got to talk about something serious, like y'all could have just left this out for real.
Right. Right.
You're just obviously, like Van Damme. I love me some Van Damme movies, but anyway, so
another thing about
I know Steven Seagal, and I feel like it's along those lines where it's just like Steven Seagal.
But you're great at action, but please don't act.
Right.
I will tell you another thing I loved about the acting was that this has to be like one of my favorite bromance situations. The two of them were so great together.
The perfect buddy.
As you're watching it though, I really just felt like I was watching like someone that they've been knowing each other for years. He's coming over, he's in the refrigerator, his clothes are folded on the dryer.
And Britt, that's how it would be.
I was just like, Murtaugh, Riggs, you moved in, essentially.
But
He's
that's how it would
all
be.
The kids.
Totally.
It would be. And so I loved that so much. Yeah. Just how you were just watching this movie,
and you don't always get to see that.
Just to see, you don't.
Yeah,
but you're getting into see them be family, and I was just like, I just love it so much.
That's how it would be. Trish would see Riggs as this guy who, let's make sure we get him a hot meal.
Because
he was, he's gone through some things.
Yeah,
he's living in a trailer with a dog. Like
he clearly has he needs emotional support.
But even as his as his character was evolving, he was still is who he is. And so when he was trying to stop smoking, he started turning to dog snacks. It was like, Riggs, what is happening here? This is why we have to take care of you. You're our oldest child. What is wrong?
I did like that he had like relationships with the family members, like direct with the family members. You know, like he was able to confide things in Murtaugh's wife. Like they had a real relationship. He had a relationship with the kids. That was so nice. Thank you for highlighting that, sis, because you don't get to see that. You think like when you think about like the buddy, like, oh, we're partners, we're ride or die. You only see it in the field of battle. You don't get to see it in this way. So that I didn't get there. So thank you for saying that, sis. That is something else that makes it unique.
Brittany also made me think about just when you're thinking about the family dynamic of when Riggs first came over and the kids were there at the dinner table and like, and you see how she was enamored with Riggs.
The oldest daughter.
And what I'm saying is that anybody who has sisters, as I do, I have several. Each of mine account for at least 4. So I basically have 8 sisters. So, but everybody who has sisters,
you're welcome.
Has
sounds like a fun time.
Especially when they're young, and like you see your sisters get googly eyed at somebody, and like that just rang very true to me.
Yeah,
like the way
so good.
The way that was, and the way that one of them teased the other one, like she likes Mark and she's in love.
Yes,
and
you know what, bro? And they did not show them be overly like, you know how sometimes they'll show siblings that are just really mean towards each other and saying awful things.
Family.
It was like, there might be these little spits, but that that's not the dynamic of the family.
Right.
I really love that. Even in 4, where you're seeing them plan for the babies, and Lorna just you're jumping into their everyday life. So Lorna coming to the house, it's just like it's a Tuesday, like, and we're going shopping today.
That's right.
Totally.
I really love that. I really love that dynamic. So.
All right, here's my next bullet. There are no setups without payoffs. And by that, I mean like, and this is something that gets lost in the sauce when you watch movies and it over and over again, and you start realizing, man, they left that plot point dangling, even if you didn't notice it the first time around. But everything in Lethal Weapon, even if it's something small, it's like, okay, we need to show Riggs' proficiency with the weapon. So we'll have him at the shooting range, we'll have Murtaugh shoot, he's good, and then we'll show Riggs, who's really good. So now we have his skill set. So now that makes sense later on when he's sniping, or like they talk about the, in 3 where they had the special tip bullets, like, and they showed this can even go through a vest. And so when Lorna got shot, right, and they also showed the rookie cop get shot and died, even though he had on his vest.
Right.
So, and then they paid it off big because when Lorna got shot, you're like, even if she had on a vest, she got shot. And then they pull out, she had on 2 vests. Because in the beginning, they showed this could go through a vest. And so like every little thing had a payoff. So they wouldn't set up something.
Yeah.
So that was another major reason why I thought these movies are always really good.
Yeah, I agree with that, bro. That's a good one.
Yeah. Great taglines. And I'm not going to.
They had great taglines.
I'm not going to go through all. Listen, I was writing down a list.
Get them, bro. Get them.
No, I'm down to 2. I got down to my 2 favorites. But please, everybody know There are so many in these movies. But like when at the end of 2, right? The end of 2, when they finally got, they finally caught the guy, who was laundering the money and selling the drugs, all that kind of stuff. And the diplomatic community, again, this is something that was set up in the beginning that was paid off in the end. Because we're like, they got off scot-free because the bad guys got off scot-free basically in the beginning because of the diplomatic community. And at the end, when they had killed everybody else, and it was just the main bad guy, and he pulled up that badge, and he was like, diplomatic immunity. And then Murtaugh had that revolver. He did his little neck crack thing. It's just been revoked.
Sir, you are dead.
It gets me every time. I just love it every time I see it, because it was like you knew what they were trying to do and it didn't matter because they just did it so good.
And you know what else? I like the way that they used the taglines. There was one time, I think it was actually, you know what? I think it was the movie where they were in the desert. Was it the first one?
Yes.
They were in the desert because Murtaugh's daughter had been taken, and Riggs is out in the tumbleweeds, aiming his gun, and he's there by himself as far as he knows, but he's so high on his own supply, he still has to make a little quip before he shoots the thing. And so he makes this little comment, and in that 2 seconds it took for him to get himself all jazzed up and talking, giving a tagline instead of shooting, he then gets caught. And so I like that they didn't act like there's always time for a setup line before you take the guy out.
It's like, just do it.
Just do it. Because literally the time he spent giving that little tag, he could have just solved the whole problem.
Shot the person.
So I like that they did that. It was very realistic.
Yeah. I like that they also, it's probably not a tagline, but just that the little things that they would say to each other.
No, those are.
So okay. Well, that part, I think that was 4. And they, Riggs is down in the water because the bridge has fallen on him and he can't pull it up. And so he's like, Murtaugh's outside. Riggs, where are you? We'll be there. We'll be there. And it's
and that's also another setup and payoff.
It was. And then when he found him, he got down there, he got him, he jumped in the water, and they were up and they're out of the water. And the first thing Riggs is like, what took you so long? and I just love that was their dynamic. Like, I'm sitting here, I was underneath the stone, you just saved my life. What took you so long? I was calling for you. And then he's answering him. The way that they would answer each other in these moments where it's just not a good time to do this. I was calling for you, Riggs. I was willing myself to you. Right. He was like, well, and then he said, but then they high-fived each other and he started to drown, and then he picks him back up. And I was like, are these things improv, or is this stuff that they actually
I mean, but you're just so, because they had so many quotables in the interactions between them. And even the we're getting too old for this, and like that led into when they were having a conversation, like, no, we're gonna will it not to happen. And then, again, that was another payoff, because not only is it a tagline, it's also a payoff, because he's like, will me, will me Riggs is another one of my favorites. And that man, because I'm just so glad, because the next question out my mouth was going to be, which are the ones y'all like? And I'm just glad that y'all, you know what I mean?
I'm trying to think about one that stuck with me. I really liked, back to that scene where, Riggs is in the water. Before that whole shootout happens, they're having this whole conversation between the two of them. Do you all remember that scene where they're acting like Jet Li is not sitting there coming to?
Oh, no, they're talking. They're like, listen, you're going to be a father. I'm going to be a grandfather. We're not going to do this. Yeah, we'll get back and get him later. We'll have a howitzer or something, which is a huge the gun that goes on a tank, basically.
Yeah.
And
it's a ridiculous conversation.
It's a ridiculous conversation, and they're just having it, and it was just such a realistic rapport, because when they were having that conversation, I honestly thought about me and Brittany, because if people walked like me and Brittany, sometimes we'll be having these conversations that are so ridiculous that if anybody heard just a piece, they would just be like, what's happening? Something's gone awry. But because it's our little thing, we know what we're talking about and we can follow. And me and Brittany have both studied improv. And so sometimes we will find ourselves in these improv holes where we have created this like massive windy scenario that is so dumb.
So
but we're just agreeing with each other. Absurd. And yes, and we're building this ridiculous reality. And so when they were there having that ridiculous conversation,
we have the organization that is the intergalactic organization over all of the organizations of everywhere.
Right. The absurdity. But it rang so true for me that is the kind of thing that happens when you're just in rhythm with a person. Yeah. You just start to do things that are so dumb to everybody else. Nobody else will get it. And so I love that they did that, because it was like the writer was saying, what does real friendship look like? What does real depth of relationship look like? What happens? Somebody really sat back and thought about that. And then they gave us chances to see it.
And that scene it also capped off, because first of all, I know a lot of us didn't know nothing about Jet Li before Lethal Weapon 4, even though he has a lot of movies before that. But as far as the US, and so he was doing moves in ways we hadn't seen before. And I'm gonna tell you,
whoa.
There are a couple of things.
When you say that makes me like appreciate it more.
There are a couple of things that happened in that theater that made everybody go berserk. And I'm gonna tell you, when he ripped that top off of that gun, we had never seen nothing like that. and just because if you remember, because the scene we're talking about is when, because them families always getting kidnapped or something, so they were getting tied up.
To move. Gonna do address.
Get a security system.
Let me tell you something. By the end of 4, they sure were moving. That house was a burn.
That house was gone.
There is no remodeling.
But you just saw. But even seeing him, and they showed his prowess when he killed the first dude, like how easily he killed him.
Yeah.
But then you're seeing him watch the thugs. Like, let me watch y'all fight. He was up the stairs a little bit, and he was like, I'm not getting involved yet, because when I come down there, it's on. You know what I mean? So he was just watching.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna tell y'all, when he jumped over that banister, everybody was going crazy. And like he's doing the fight, and then they catch him with the guns, and you're like, oh, they got him. And then he rips that top of that slide right off. And then they brought it back in the conversations that I was talking about, because they're just as friends going through, he's too good. I mean, we can't fight him. He's too good. Like, we're old. We're going to be, we're going to, we got things going on. Our priorities have changed. But, he's too good. He's too good. Like that thing with the gun. How did he do that thing with the gun? I mean, how? And it was like even without discussing it, they were just looking at her. I was like, we're about to do this, aren't we?
Yeah.
And it was like, it was like, all right, let's go ask him.
Yeah. It's like when two friends are like, we're totally starting our weight loss plan today. Absolutely.
Today.
Absolutely. And you know what? Let's go to the movies tonight. We can start over tomorrow because I really want some of that candy. Me too. We'll start over tomorrow, fresh in the morning, midnight. We're going. It was that type of that.
That's
that
right. They can't step away from the action. They was trying.
Totally.
I tried.
We're talking, but we already know what we're about to do. We already know what we're
going to do. I love that. Or like that part. What was that? I think that was might have been the beginning of 4, where he was the man with the fire blaster. And first of all, where did they come up with this idea to like, let's have a crazy man in the middle of the street with a fire blaster?
That's right. Crazy man.
His mind, basically.
And that's right.
That's right.
With a flamethrower.
He was like, listen, you distract him, take off your clothes and start making chicken sounds. And so it just makes me think of their dynamic where Murtaugh was like, yeah, you think that worked? And he was like, no, I just wanted to see if you were going to do it. And it was, this is just like the pieces of their relationship where Riggs is just messing with the Murtaugh. He's just messing with them. Yeah. Like that whole story where the daughter, she does the commercial and it's a condom commercial. And he's like, Riggs, don't say nothing. I haven't seen the commercial. I don't know what it's supposed to be. And Riggs is like, of course, I'm about to tell everybody. So everybody sees his daughter in the condom commercial. And of course, there's the teasing. There's the whole condom tree on his desk at one point. And then there's even the paper ad about him. And he's like, Riggs is like, who keeps putting this up? And as Murtaugh's walking away, and it's Riggs. And everybody is just in on it, having a good time. Yeah. Just cracking up. Yeah. And it's just, I just love how that dynamic of I'm the jokester, I'm always going to get my serious friend, and he's going to do it.
It's also their age difference. It's also their age difference. It's like he's like
a different generation gap. Yeah.
It's the generation gap that he's mocking sometimes, and it's just so real. That's what it would be, and that's why it's so fun to watch.
It is fun.
I'm gonna tell you, I have to mention before we move on. Because I only had 2. I gotta mention my other favorite tagline.
Oh yeah.
Was when he at the end of 3, when he threw him the Uzi at the very end of the movie because the bad guy was driving a what's the bulldozer. Yeah. Driving a bulldozer at it, and he couldn't get through because it was a bulldozer, he couldn't shoot through it, and so Murtaugh threw him the gun with the special bullets in it. And he said, here, cop killers. And so then he shoots through, obviously, and he's able to kill him. And he was like, ex-cop killers. because the bad guy was an ex-cop. Yeah. Yeah. And that's another one, man. And which really leads me into my last bullet, which is,
wait, but that part I thought was hilarious because I just thought of how it was comical to me of how slow the tractor was going. I just thought it was so comical. And it was like, I'm coming for you.
Brittany, here's the thing, Brittany. Slow. You just let me.
It's like you're not going any faster than 5 miles per hour right now. Like you were going 1 mile per hour. You're not going fast. Right. It's not going to go fast, but it was just so funny. I was like, you have so much time to die. You really have a lot of time to die and get away.
So much time.
You led me perfectly led me into my last bullet. Perfectly. You perfectly, because we talked about before about them sticking to the formula. But what I'm saying is I love how I love when movies be what they are. I love that. And what I mean by that is Riggs going to shoot down a helicopter with a 9mm pistol? Yes, he is. Is he going to jump out of a car and catch up with somebody on the highway and he's running?
By cutting down an alleyway?
Yes, he's going to do.
Absolutely.
And is not only this slow-moving bulldozer going to give him enough time to get the other gun? Is he also going to die perfectly so that his foot goes on the gas and he rams into the already burning building that somehow burns everybody except for Riggs, Murtaugh, and Lorna? But in the middle of all this, yes,
it is.
That's right. Yes, I love all of it.
It is.
Because don't try, and it's like, when we're making a movie, we're entertaining you. Like, there's serious movies out here, but this is Lethal Weapon. So guess what? We are doing Lethal Weapon stuff.
Yes.
Well, one thing I don't want us to miss is that we didn't really talk about Chris Rock and how
him. He was funny.
He wasn't that funny to me, but I still enjoyed him.
I thought that was my favorite Chris Rock role.
I still enjoyed him, but I think it's just because I thought he was a little nervous self.
And I thought he was a good, just like you were talking about earlier, Britt. He was a good addition.
Yeah,
he was. He flowed,
I would definitely agree with that.
Wasn't too much, wasn't too little.
And how he was able to riff on Leo Getz, because Leo's thing was, they always talking about how he's getting screwed. First was at the drive-through. Then it's, he talks about. But when they were both talking about the cell phones, that was if you remember, cell phones were just coming out.
Yeah.
At that point, so it was just a very hilarious conversation, especially at the time because everybody could kind of relate because that's how cell phone service was at the time. Your first.
It was funny. I was like, man, this is so true. Yeah. So, I definitely he was without talking about him.
Yeah, he was another great addition. And the other thing I love is that they didn't give him. Chris Rock wouldn't have been able to act on the level of a Joe Pesci or a Danny Glover or a Mel Gibson. So they didn't give him that serious moment. You know what I mean? And I don't know if that was intentional, but I'm just saying it felt like the heavy scenes they gave to the people who can handle it, and the people like Chris Rock who were going to be great. Like when he was talking stuff on Leo Getz in the car, and he was like, "I gotta be a perp. So look at the suit, look at the bag, check out the gun, license, registration." I mean,
he had a little bit of a serious part. He had to still pretend like it was his first time meeting Rianne when that's
and that was good, and he did good, and it was subtle. It was a little look. He can handle that.
He did that.
He can handle that. He can handle the look. Hopefully, he didn't take too many takes. But the point I'm trying to say is, they let everybody play to their strengths.
Yep.
Yeah.
They let everybody play to their strengths.
Yep. And this is the kind of movie where we'll never ever be able to ever guess what hit the cutting room floor. How much improv did Chris Rock give them that didn't work, and we'll never see it. How much did Joe Pesci be a nervous mess, and we'll never get to see it,
And that's a whole another thing, because we were speaking earlier about how both of you haven't seen that many Joe Pesci movies. And I
haven't seen that.
And when we'll watch a couple. Goodfellas, put Goodfellas on the list. Okay. So when you see the extremes of how he could do, I just love Joe Pesci because he could go from the most.
See, I need to be able to respect him.
Joe Pesci's not Home Alone.
Oh yes, he is.
That's right. That's right.
He's also my cousin Vinny. That's how I.
He's in My Cousin Vinny, and he's in Goodfellas. He's in Home Alone, and he's in.
He's very diverse.
Yeah,
man. He's great.
And he's good at all of it.
That's one of those unsung. I wonder, has he ever won any awards?
Oh, he's.
You know what? I'm gonna
Joe Pesci is very respected.
Since I'm in the content planner, putting in Goodfellas, I'll just put Joe Pesci. Maybe we'll figure out a way to
Maybe we'll figure that out. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, let's vote.
Let's vote.
So,
bro,
I mean, obviously it gets my countdown.
I'm sorry.
He got his countdown from the beginning.
You don't care about the format of someone posing the question so that you can then respond, bro. Does the
I've been restraining myself for the past hour and a half.
Bro, do you care that we need to start slicing our podcast up into clips for advertising? We got to get these bites, okay, bro? Does the Lethal Weapon
cool.
franchise?
You could see your whites. That was so cool.
Does the Lethal Weapon franchise get your countdown?
Yes, it gets my countdown. Which is really a count up, actually. Anyway, but yes, it gets my countdown.
The count. Well,
it gets my count. It gets my count. It gets my count. Yes.
For me, I will tell you, and I shared this as I was watching it. I watched the movies 4 nights in a row. So I watched it on Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. And I will tell you all, I watched the first one. I watched the second one, and I honestly was not looking forward to watching the third. And I was not looking forward to then watching the fourth. And so
Listen,
I want to say
she was on the struggle bus.
I was, and it was. So I want to say that the franchise gets my count, but I do not recommend it for a binge. I don't. And it is not to take away from these movies, but I just don't think that because I am a person that is good at binge watching. For me, going through a series of movies or a television show over a couple of days, I don't lose the luster typically, but it was hard to watch these 4 days in a row. And so I wish I hadn't, to be honest with you. I wish I had given myself some space. Mm-hmm. So I want to name that. I want to say it gets my count, but I think I would recommend they are not binge movies. And maybe it's because they do too good of a job of keeping the recipe. But it was just like, oh my gosh, here we go again.
Gotcha.
But for all the reasons that we've always talked about what makes a movie a classic, this franchise, it truly has pieces that are so special that they add to cinema overall. And also there were some amazing performances, and each of the movies in the franchise can stand alone and be appreciated. So, for those reasons, and I have to just, again, like their intention around diversity, gender, and race, I have to celebrate. So for those reasons, yes, it gets my count. Sis?
I will tell you, it absolutely gets my count. It is definitely considered a classic to me. I think the entire franchise is great. I was opposite from my sister. I enjoyed watching each. I look forward to each one, and I appreciated how it took me away from my expectation. It threw me off a bit because I was like, wow, I just didn't imagine it being so dramatic, but it didn't disappoint me. It didn't disappoint me. Yeah. So I do appreciate the entire franchise, and I think it's something that's going to last, and people will always enjoy any of the Lethal Weapons, no matter which one of them is on.
Yeah, there's a timelessness in them. I mean, they're just quality.
Yeah, I think I'm about to go watch it again right now.
Oh, that's
there
doing,
you have
you're
it,
doing
folks. The Lethal Weapon franchise is a classic from the right perspective.
Lean on me, hater.
Bro and sis, we have officially kicked off season 2 of our podcast. I am so excited to be on this journey with y'all.
S2E1.
Let's see what season 2 has in store. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. That's the right perspective. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.